Stop recording.
3, 2, 1. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Maxwell Ivy, known around the world as the Blind Blogger. And this is another episode of What's Your Excuse, which you can always find at theblindblogger.net or by asking Alexa or Google to play What's Your Excuse. And I bring you interviews with people who have overcome adversity or thrived in spite of difficult life circumstances, those who have struck out and established unusual businesses on their own, people with real world tested advice to help you overcome your excuses, and people who I find personally interesting or inspiring. The goal is by the end of our time together, I want you to ask yourself, hey, if that person can do it, then what's my excuse? Again, at theblindblogger.net. I also hope you will visit my sponsor, Chip Edwards from createmyvoice.com. He is the best, the expert at voice branding using Alexa, Google, Siri, and other applications where people find your content simply by using their voice. And that is becoming such a big part of our online world that if you're not there, you're missing out. It's no longer a nice thing to have. It is a necessity that people be able to find you. And of course, as Chip has always reminded me, if you do not claim your name on those devices, somebody else will, and then people will receive whatever content they want them to get when they're looking for you, and that's not a good thing. So createmyvoice.com, use the contact form, and he will definitely get back to you and discuss it, explain it, and get you started. So again, createmyvoice.com. And, we're going to get to, please do visit the website, theblindblogger.net/store. That's where you can find copies of my books, which is actually how me and my guest of today, Ken Brandt, first got together. Was a friend of mine gave him a copy or asked him to read a copy of one of my books, and he gave me a great review and great feedback. And I started to learn a little bit more about him. So Ken is he's a person who grew up with difficulties with vision. He was cross-eyed. He had over 6 surgeries, has had cataract and detached retina surgeries. But he likes to talk about how his vision problems allowed him to have adventures and experiences and see the world in a different way because of his eye troubles. And he's even written a book about that, and it's called My Vision: The Adventures and Advantages of Poor Eyesight. I'm looking forward to talking to him about that because people say some of the same things about me. And you can find him at kenbrandt.com, KenBrandt.com. We'll give out his social media stuff later. And I know I got the name of his book wrong, but just one last thing. That was him playing, and we will get to that later in the podcast because that's a story I don't want to get ahead of or behind of. So, Ken, welcome to What's Your Excuse? Thank you for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Max. It's fun to be here.
I have the feeling that you're one of those people that it's fun being wherever you happen to be at that moment.
Well, that's definitely a good goal. I wish I could achieve it all the time.
Well, that's a good reminder. No matter how well we are adjusted to how we see the world, none of us do it all the time. So it just makes you more real and believable that you still aspire to do better. So thank you for that.
I'm sure everybody's aspiring to, hopefully everybody's aspiring to do better. And we're just 2 of those people.
Right. So I always like to start with one question that I feel like if I get a good answer to that question, that it'll get us off to a really good start. So what I want to know is, could you please explain what you mean by having great adventures and advantages of poor eyesight?
Sure. Well, just a quick minor point. The full name of the book is Positive Vision:
Positive Vision.
Enjoying the Adventures and Advantages of Poor Eyesight. So the adventures are really a bunch of stories that events in my life that I thought were fun and people enjoyed hearing about over a coffee or a beer or just sitting around talking. And I took the ones that people liked the most and just wrote them all down. And that's the basis of the book. And then interspersed with that are my thoughts on the advantages of poor eyesight, because even though I think, good eyesight is undoubtedly, no question, better than poor eyesight, there are some advantages to poor eyesight, and it's worth thinking about and enjoying and laughing about them as well. So that was the whole thing. I had spent my life basically not wanting to talk about my eyesight because I thought, it would just cause people to ask questions or feel bad for me. And people realized I couldn't see as well, but they didn't realize how poor my eyesight was. So I just didn't bring it up in discussions. And then during my career, I was an information security and information technology manager and management consultant for many years. I really enjoyed that. But I didn't want to bring up anything related to eyesight or get in those conversations because I figured that would be bad for my career. But now I'm retired, I'm just goofing off and playing trumpet and staying in shape and stuff. So I don't care about my career. And so I thought, well, you know what? I should just put all this stuff into a book, because there's some other people with poor eyesight that, it might help and they might like it and think it's funny. Plus, there's a whole bunch of people that just will like the adventures. So that was my whole theory, and that's where the name came from. Although the name didn't come instantly, it took me a while to think it through, and I ran it by a bunch of people, but here it is.
Right. Well, could you share one of the stories from the book with us, please?
Sure. One of the first stories is about parachuting. So I like going fast, like I like to run and sprint. That's no problem. But rollerblading, bicycling, I can easily go faster than I can see the potholes and the dips and the little bumps coming up. So that gets a little dicey.
Voiceover off.
And then driving, I've had a very small amount of experience driving, which I clearly was never supposed to do, and it's not safe for society. So it's very good that I don't do it. So I thought, parachuting, you're up in the sky, you're going really fast when you're coming down. I said, that might be a ton of fun. So while I was in university, I went to American University in Washington, D.C. Two friends of mine and I went to Downsville, Maryland. That's the real name of the town, Downsville, Maryland, which is hysterical. And we took parachuting lessons for a weekend. So we go up there and you learn all this stuff, which is interesting. You learn how to land and from without, jarring yourself as little as possible, which you figure is probably a good skill to have if you ever have to jump out a window when, due to a fire or something. So it's a semi-useful skill, I guess, that I've never had to use otherwise, but it's nice to know I can do it. Anyway, you learn all this stuff about jumping and which way to fall and what to do when the wind is blowing this way or that way. what to do if you land in trees. You cross your legs, which is a very, good idea so you don't get your private parts damaged. So after learning all of that, then you learn about your backup parachute. Like you jump out and you have a certain amount of time, and if your parachute doesn't open, you need to know how to open your backup parachute. And this was training in how to do everything yourself. It was not the kind of thing that is fairly common now, which is probably a lot of fun, but not what I'm talking about. It's not being strapped to somebody else and that person
you're
does
not talking
everything for you.
Right. Yeah. You're not talking about what they generally refer to as tandem jumping for visually impaired.
Exactly. It's not that. We were going up in the plane. We were getting into the outside. We were jumping. We were landing on our own. The whole thing was different. And it was the old style round parachutes. It wasn't the rectangular parachutes of nowadays. So go up in the plane, and it's a little tiny plane. So, and there's no door. There's just an opening where the door would be. And only the pilot, the instructor, and 3 or 4 brand new parachuters, parachuting guys and women are in the plane, all crammed in, and there's no seats except for the pilot. So we're in the plane, and I'm inches away. I'm the closest one to what would be the door, but it's this big space. So you're in this little plane, and you can't help but be a little nervous just taking off and getting into the right places you're flying, because you're inches away from nothing, if the plane turns suddenly, you're going to fall out the door. So that was, I thought, actually exciting by itself. Anyway, we're in the right place, and it's time to start, right? So what you do is you crawl out of that opening, which I was worried about. You crawl out and so your feet are standing on this bar that's over the plane's wings. You're outside the plane, right? And your hands are holding onto a bar under the wing. So your hands are on something under the wing. Your feet are on a bar over the wheels. You're hanging on for dear life because the plane is flying. The wind is howling and running. The engine is roaring. You're flying. You're literally flying along. It's very exciting. You're holding on as hard as you can, and then the instructor yells. He goes, "Jump!" But of course you can't hear him because it's so noisy out there. But what else is he going to be saying? So then, after holding on for dear life, you let go. You jump back, and there you are. You're all of a sudden, you're just dropping like a rock. You're going towards the ground. It's really, really exciting. And then, and you're attached. The first 3 times you parachute, you have a line between you and the plane that is supposed to release your parachute. But it takes a while, and the plane is pretty far away before your parachute opens. So you can't help but think, should I open the backup? Should I open the backup? Should I open the backup? Well, luckily I did not, because it's a real mess if your backup parachute opens and your main parachute opens also, because they'll get entangled, and then it's like having no parachute at all. So I didn't open my backup. The main parachute opens. It feels great. It's a very, very good feeling when your parachute opens. So then I realized, all right, where am I and what am I supposed to be aiming for? And then it occurred to me for the first time, I probably should have thought about whether I could see where I'm supposed to aim for before I jump out of the plane, So I look around and I'm thinking, all right, because they told me you aim for this little frisbee size thing. It was competitive parachuting. So that's how you compete. How close can you get to a frisbee, right?
All right.
So that's totally impossible for me to see. So then I look around and I go, all right, it's all big fields, crops and fields, except for this one place that's not crops. And I figured, all right, that must be it. So I aimed for that. It was pretty big. And that was where the plane originally took off from, and it was a little airport, and it wasn't green like all the other places. So I get much closer to that, and then I see, all right, there's a circle, a big circle of people, and they're standing around. I go, all right, that must be where I'm supposed to go. So I get closer, 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 much closer, and then I can finally see the Frisbee in the middle of the circle. So then that was good, and I got pretty close. I got pretty close, and based on that, and being good at drinking beers with the more senior parachuting people, and they made me the captain of my university parachuting team. So I was very excited about that. And then you had the choice for your second parachuting jump. You had the option of packing your own parachute. You could use one somebody else packed, or you could pack your own. I figured, well, I really like this sport. And you're taking your life in your hands anyway. I might as well go all out and learn how to pack the parachute. So after I landed, the way you do it is you spread your parachute out on the ground as well as you can. But if it's windy, like it was that day, you need to take rocks and place them on the parachute to hold it flat, and then you roll it up. And as you roll it up, you take the rocks and you throw them out. So you just roll up the parachute, that's it. So then I go up for my second parachuting jump. And this time, same exact things happen, it's great. But when my parachute opened, like bam, 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 I'm getting pummeled by small and medium-sized rocks that I didn't see when I was packing my parachute. I had just missed them. Luckily, you're wearing a helmet. You wear a motorcycle helmet when you parachute. So nothing hurt, but it was like, it was a ton of them. I missed, hundreds, it seemed like. And then I looked down. There was nothing I could have done, but I was hoping nobody was underneath me. But nobody was, and nobody ever said anything. So I assume that worked out fine for anybody who was below. But, you got to be much more careful about taking the rocks out than I was. So I landed, and I did it a third time, and I just had a great time. I really, really enjoyed it. But then upon a discussion with my eye doctor, an ophthalmologist, he said, you definitely should not be parachuting because you've had 2 detached retinas. And if you have a giant blow to the head, which could happen if things go a little wrong in parachuting, you could lose sight in one of your eyes or both of your eyes. So I very reluctantly gave up parachuting, but I thought it was a ton of fun. I stayed friends with a bunch of those people for a long time. And I highly recommend this sport to anybody who has not had a detached retina.
Okay. Well, Ken, you're a really good storyteller, but at this point, I have to ask you the obvious question, actually. How did it make you feel when you had to give up something that you had found that much joy in because of your vision?
Well, it was sad, but I thought, it's my choice. I think I made the right choice. And I actually have it in a chapter of my book called Living Longer, where I think that not parachuting, as well as not doing, some other stuff, as well as some other more proactive, positive things, you can actually live. It's an advantage of poor eyesight. You can actually live longer if you don't do parachuting. If you don't, I would definitely have gotten a motorcycle and had a motorcycle license if I could see well. And, that's probably not so hot for long life. I did I briefly did some construction work. I worked on some repairs I was a sheet metal worker, and I did some repairs to the World Trade Center, and then I had to give that up because they thought they thought I needed a note from my eye doctor to say I could see well enough, and he didn't give it to me. So I had to give that up also. And so, you live and learn. You pick other things. If it wasn't for all of those things, I maybe wouldn't have gone into information technology and information security, which worked out very, very well. So, all of that is good. Other things where I think you can, poor vision maybe leads to longer life. Because you're interested in articles and events about vision and possible improvements, you read about them, and then right next to them are stories about general health and diet and exercise. And so you end up reading those, and you probably end up being in better shape medically and better shape physically, all of that kind of stuff, just because you're paying attention to those things. So there's all kinds of good things about it.
Yeah, but this is a common thing among people with vision losses is, more than once having to either accept that they cannot do something that they felt like they would enjoy, or having to give it up after they started because of their vision, So,
yeah. You give it a shot and see what happens,
Yeah. The other thing, I liked what you were saying there about how, you can make decisions that are based on longer life. I am, because of my show, What's Your Excuse? People are often asking me to try things, and I've had to get to a point where I'm like, okay, just because I can do something doesn't mean that I have to or that I will. And people make fun of me, the fact that on my list of 5 or 6 things I ain't never going to do, one of them is skydiving.
Well, a lot of people are in your camp. I most of the people I tell that story to would never ever do it. They're amazed anybody would do it. And fair enough. I'm not trying to talk anybody into it. I just think it was a lot of fun, and some people might like it.
Yeah. And the other thing that kept coming out in your story that I want to ask you how you came to have this understanding is, at the points where I thought my answer would have been, this is really scary, your comment was, this was very exciting. So how does somebody is that, were you raised that way? Do you have any idea where, this idea that speed is fun and that things other people would consider scary, you consider exciting? Where does that come from?
I have no idea. Is it, I guess part of it is, I guess genes and upbringing. I had some people in my family who were brave and did different things. And, my father and one of my grandfathers got medals for courage in the Korean War and World War I. And, my mother, I think, has done some very brave things. When I was brought up, I was very lucky. I was never, ever in any discussion with my parents about any possible limits on what I might or might not be able to do as an adult. It wasn't until I got to the age where everybody I knew was getting a driver's license and I couldn't, that I really thought about limitations. I had just not been in those discussions or thought about it. I always had a view when I was growing up that I could do whatever I wanted. So I had a very, thanks largely to my mother. My father died early, but I had a very, very positive outlook. And it turns out, unknown to me until much later, she made sure other relatives and friends and teachers and stuff never brought up subjects of limitations with me. So that was great. And I had no idea till later. So just another reason to appreciate my ma. So recent Mother's Day was recently. And so happy Mother's Day again, Ma.
Yeah, it's a good lesson for anybody that is listening, that is raising children or concerned that may be about to raise children with any type of a disability, is the type how they will deal with it as an adult. So a lot of that goes back to, how did you deal with it when they were growing up when they were toddlers, elementary school, junior high, etc. So I'm glad we got to talk about that. Now, the other thing I promised my listeners we would talk about is your playing the music on the intro to the show. And I want to do this because I really hope that more people are paying attention. I mean, it just brings me so much joy to know that you reached out to me and you said, Max, I noticed that you sing on the intros to your show. What would you think about me playing some music on the intro to your show? And so, naturally I had to say yes. I'm glad I did. I mean, because you can't go around telling people if they don't ask, people can't say yes. And then when somebody asks you something very simple and very reasonable, and then tell them, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. So
well, someday in the future, I hope we can do a duet intro. That would be fun.
It would, and it is totally my fault, y'all, that it didn't happen this time, because Ken has been very patient and understanding with me, waiting for his time on the show. And we talked about him possibly playing the music from my new song and me singing with him. But I just felt like it was going to keep us from having this conversation. I didn't really want to do that any longer. So, but I think it's, like I say, I wanted to share this because it's a reminder to everybody that's listening. Really, it just comes down to, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. And I would like to hear more about how long you've been a musician, and do you think the musical background played any part in your life as far as how you have lived your life with vision loss?
Well, first, it's I'm at a much earlier time of the morning than you are. So as we're recording this, it's Thursday morning, 8 a.m. my time, and 5 p.m. Wednesday night.
You're not gonna aw shucks me and tell me you could have played a lot better, are you?
I am going to say I botched up the first two notes, but I apologize for that. But anyway, it was a lot of fun playing. I enjoy playing trumpet. I have a very mixed, I have to stress, I'm an amateur trumpet player, not nowhere close to professional, but I really enjoy it. I started playing when I was a little kid. I got a trumpet in fourth grade or something. When the band came to explain musical instruments to the kids who might want to take music lessons, all the different instruments played, and they explained why they were great and everything. I just remember that for me, I was truly shocked, truly surprised that everybody didn't pick trumpet. It seemed so obvious to me it was the best instrument, but of course it's perfect and great that everybody has different favorites. Otherwise, there would just be trumpets. There'd be no other instruments. So that happened. I played for a little bit, and then, I stupidly, dropped it and didn't do anything with it for a really long time. Then I went to university, and I did not nowhere close to being a music major, but I started taking lessons off to the side and playing, and I really enjoyed that. I was invited to be in a band, but I was going to school full time and working 3 days a week, so I didn't really have time for that. And I got out of university and I moved to New York City and lived in a studio apartment where it was pretty much impossible to practice. Your neighbors could hear you very, very easily. So I ended up not playing for a long time. Eventually I moved to a different apartment, a bigger apartment, and coincidental with that, I went to the opening day. It was spectacularly great, of the Louis Armstrong House Museum in New York City, which I highly recommend to anybody, whether you're whatever instrument you play or like listening to. It's a really fun place to go, and you see where he and his wife lived, and you learn a lot about him, and the exhibits are fabulous. Anyway, on opening day, I took the day off from work. It was a Tuesday. Beautiful, bright, sunny, blue day, perfect weather. And they had great trumpeters. Some had flown in from different parts of the world, many from other parts of the US, and tons from New York City. And it was nonstop trumpet playing by great trumpeters in front of the house all day. First one, then another, then another. After a while, they realized they were never going to get through all of them. So they started having them 2 at a time. And then by the end of the day, they were having them 3 at a time. And it was so good. I said, all right, I've got to start taking trumpet lessons and get going again. So that's exactly what I did. And so much later as an adult, I started doing that. And now I play in 2 bands. One is a trad jazz band. We do New Orleans style jazz music and participate in some parades and fundraisers and barbecues and stuff. And the other is a marching protest band, which we join marches in favor of a cleaner environment and human rights and stuff, both of which are very fun. So how does that relate to vision? It's harder to see the sheet music. So I end up holding it very close. I'll show you this. So like if I'm playing, I'm holding the music very close. I'm demonstrating now. So it'll be like this or like this. So yeah, what I really should be spending much more time doing, and I'm trying to work on this now, is learning to play by ear. Because there's so many people who are completely blind who are great musicians. Like Stevie Wonder. You know, it's Stevie Wonder's birthday today. So happy birthday, Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
But I'm going to start practicing much more of that, because it would be much more fun. You know, you can memorize songs, and also you can learn to play by ear. So I want to get good at that. That's one of my goals coming up.
Right. I just thought that, you know, they talk about the mental and emotional value of playing music, and I was just thinking that might have had some impact on you when you know, going through all the various surgeries and the difficulties of your vision experience.
Well, I've had a ton of ups and downs. My vision has gone up and down and up and down. I was legally blind parts of my life. I was, but now I'm at about 20/80 in my good eye and 21/60 in my other eye. So I've gone from there down to pretty low, and back up a bunch of times depending on, you know, different circumstances. So I've had a lot of variety, you know, not just sort of one way getting worse or one way getting better. Most of the time when I was going through those, almost all of those, you know, downhills and then surgeries, I wasn't playing trumpet. It wasn't until the very most recent one. So I can't say there was an impact there, but I can say that playing music is with other people is just a really fun thing. You know, whether, you know, people are in choirs or in their bands or anything, there's always a place to start. There's always people welcoming. It's a really fun, different kind of social activity. You know, it's not sports. It's not a discussion. It's not like watching something together. You're actually doing and creating something together. It's a different, interesting kind of satisfaction. It uses your brain in a whole bunch of different ways. You're hearing, you're producing the sound. You're trying to stay in sync with everybody else. Everybody's trying to stay in sync with you. It involves a lot of fun things.
Okay. All right. Well, y'all, I'm sitting here. I'm talking with Ken Brandt. He is the author of Positive Visions: Enjoying the Adventures and Advantages of Poor Eyesight. And you can find him at kenbrandt.com. That's Brandt. And we've been talking about his life and his book, his experiences. And so you wrote the book hoping that your stories might encourage other people. So, what has been your experience as far as promoting the book, sharing your stories, and what kind of responses have you received?
Very positive responses. You know, I'm on, if you go to kenbrandt.com, you can see the links to LinkedIn and Goodreads and Facebook and Twitter and stuff. And I've gotten, you know, lots of positive comments, and also a whole lot of really nice interviews and articles, which are just wonderful. You know, it's like people, you know, I didn't know before are writing nice things about the book. So that's very heartwarming and encouraging. My hope is, I'm a little conservative in terms of the coronavirus. I'm reluctant to travel that much and be in places until I'm vaccinated, and a lot of people are vaccinated. But after that, I hope to go out and, you know, do book talks and meet more people, because it's really fun. I've also had the joy of meeting a whole bunch of people I hadn't met before, and, you know, like yourself, and that's just a great thing. You know, all of a sudden I know a bunch of people around the world that I didn't know before, which is really fun. And, you know, and I invite them all over. If you're ever in Melbourne, Australia, you know, come over for lunch. It'd be fun. We'd show you around, and my wife and I would love to meet you in person.
Well, I would love to do that. And, you know, people are starting to be a little less quick to invite me, because in the last few years I've actually showed up to meet some of those people, and so it's one thing to do it when you're pretty sure they won't actually take you up on it, you know. But I've got kind of a reputation.
I definitely would not have said it unless they hoped you would take us up on it.
Well, I look forward.
Let's talk a little about some other advantages of poor eyesight, which people don't think about that much.
Great, I love that.
So I think one of the advantages, for example, is I think that people with poor eyesight have the edge in some ways in public speaking. Now, lots of people are terrified of public speaking. Apparently, according to polls, many people would rather die than, you know, give a speech. But for us, people who cannot see very well, there's some good things, you know, like if you can't see anybody, or you can only see a few of the people, it doesn't really matter how big the crowd is. You can't see more of them. You can't see what's going on in the back. It just doesn't matter. So you're not intimidated like people who can see everybody in the audience. Also, a lot of times you're on stage and the lights are on you, and that's, you know, sort of blinding your view to the audience entirely, no matter how well or poorly you see. And that makes people of good vision a little bit nervous, because they can't see the faces and the reactions of facial expressions of people in the audience. But if you're of poor vision, that doesn't bother you at all, because you can't see that very well. You can't know what's going on. You're totally used to judging people's reaction by, are they laughing in the right place? You know, is there a murmur in the right place? That kind of thing. You're used to judging by hearing rather than by seeing as to what the reaction is. So you got those edges there. And then the other thing is, because, you know, I can't read my own notes very easily. You know, they have to be gigantic, in which case you need too many pieces of paper, you know, so you really have to memorize the outline of what you're going to say and have a good feel for the contents of what you're going to say. So you can just rip through your speech and you don't have to worry about that. That could be, you know, anybody could do that, but we have to do it. So it makes us, in a sense, better speakers. Sometimes when you give a speech, you have PowerPoints where you've got these slides that are going, and So, I can create them, but while I'm giving the speech, I can't really see them very well. So I go along, and most of the time I'm pretty much in order with my PowerPoints, but sometimes, I'm not in the right order anymore. I'm speaking about some slide and it's not the slide that's being shown to the audience. So, they get a little confused, but they start paying more attention because they're trying to figure it out. But I'm totally relaxed because I don't know I'm out of order. Then what happens is if, which doesn't always happen, if I realize I'm out of order, then I just laugh and explain what happened. I go, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm just talking about the speech and hoping I'm in the right order, but I can't really see the slides. Then they laugh, and then you have an additional bond between you and the audience that, just happens. Nobody really cares, So then you continue on, and that all works. So anybody could do that kind of thing, but it's an edge for us. Then you have the Q&A sessions. What I suggest to anybody is, especially if they have poor vision, is get somebody else. I love Q&A, but get somebody else to pick which person asks a question. Don't do that yourself, because if I'm doing that, first, I'm going to miss a lot of people. Somebody will be standing up or raising their hand, and I'm just not going to see them. Second, I have slightly crossed eyes. If I'm tired, they're even more crossed. And so people are confused as to which person I'm pointing to. And then you also have the advantage. If you're not the one picking the person, you don't have to pay attention to that. You can concentrate entirely on what the question is and what your answer is and where you are. So there's a bunch of advantages for us, and it's in an area that many people are terrified about, public speaking.
Yeah, I like to make a joke at the Q&A. I like to tell them, okay, I'm not going to tell y'all to raise your hands, and get a little laugh, and then I ask the MC if they'll handle that for me, and they usually will. But it's been one of those places where Zoom. That's one thing that Zoom has made easier is the Q&A. Something that I'm curious about, because we're both public speakers, and I imagine you've done some virtual presentations on Zoom. Am I correct?
In a small scale, but not as much as I would like. I probably should be looking into that more.
All right. Well, just as long as you've done at least a few, so you understand what I'm asking about. For those of y'all who are sighted and don't have this issue, I find that I enjoy doing virtual talks less than in person, because with my vision loss, I can't see you. And when you do a virtual talk, they turn off the audience, so you can't hear them. So to me, it's kind of like talking in front of a green screen. So I'm wondering, is it one of the, have you had that experience? And, does that mean speaking in person is even easier than doing this Zoom stuff?
I'm lucky because I can see enough to use a computer. So I can do that, but I do, if you have like a small Zoom where there's 20 people or something and everybody's microphone is turned on, then you can sort of hear reactions, but you're right, in the bigger ones where only the speaker's microphone goes on, it's I do miss that. I like hearing all the reactions, or the no reaction. There's also something you can learn from total silence.
Okay.
That joke was not nearly as funny as you thought,
Yeah. I hate having to laugh at my jokes, or at least figure the time that people would laugh at my jokes so that I can keep on schedule. But something else I think that people often tell me is a positive, and maybe you could share some experiences about this one, is that I seem to be less judgmental of others, and I tend to see positive traits in people that other people miss that have good vision.
I think that's because of your attitude towards life and people as opposed to your vision. I would say my theory, my belief is that that's an independent variable. It doesn't matter how well or poorly you see, is not related to how you treat other people and think of other people. That's my initial reaction. I don't mean to crush your theory. I just think that
my theory.
It's a positive for you as a person, but it's unrelated to your vision.
No, it's not my theory. I just have many people who say that that I see lots of things that people with vision miss. So it's not
that could be
theory. It's not my theory. So what are some other things where you feel like lack of poor vision is an advantage?
Balance, for example. Like if I'm walking around or running or something, I'm on the sidewalk and it's night or sometimes during the day, is there, is that dark spot? Is that like a little hole? Is that leaves? Is that ice? Is that bump or what? Like I'm not really sure some of the time. And sometimes you don't see, like a dip or a bump or something. So you're walking along and you develop, I think, better balance in terms of just walking, because instead of anticipating and reacting, you have to react as your foot hits the pavement. You've got to be able to, keep walking and just do the right thing. And so, sometimes you get a jolt where you're going down, and sometimes you get a jolt where you're going up. You just keep going. So you have better balance in that sense. Another advantage, I think this is an advantage, although some people argue with me about this one. So this is possibly a controversial advantage.
Okay.
I think if you have some sight, your hand-eye coordination is actually probably way better. And the reason, I'm not saying you're faster at seeing and catching a ball, for example, than people with good vision, because they see the ball way, 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 way farther away than you do. What I'm saying is, if you have poor vision, you have to react much faster because you don't see the ball until it's much closer. So your hand-eye coordination, your ability to get your hand in the right place to catch the ball, has to be better to catch the same ball as somebody who has good vision. So I really like that theory. It's totally useless. It doesn't change anything in anybody's life, but I like it.
Okay. But I can understand it. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I can understand it. It would be kind of like if you told a hockey goalie to react to seeing the puck, but you're not going to let him see the puck till it gets to the crease or to the mouth of the cage. So he would have to react so much quicker because he's going to see it. And of course, he's going to make far more mistakes because the person that can see it farther off can anticipate and add the anticipation to their reaction abilities.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can understand it. It does make some sense. And there's something that you didn't mention that I can see in this. When you're interpreting the spin of a ball, say a baseball thrown by a pitcher that's 62.5 feet away, sometimes you guess wrong because you see the spin of that ball out of the pitcher's hand. And so it could be that having to depend on the ball just as it gets to the home plate, you may not guess wrong as much. One of those things is no way to ever figure that out because they're not going to put me and you in a baseball game.
No. As a kid, I was in many softball games, and that was fun. But the ball's definitely going faster than I could easily see it.
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, I was so bad at sports, they made me the pitcher for kickball because they felt like that way neither team would have to take me. They also figured that if I threw the ball for both teams, neither team could complain.
There's a lot to that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I used to do when I was in high school. I was on the cross country team, and one time we went on like an away trip, and we were in the mountains, and for training, and everybody was, all right, we'll go down this road. There's no turns until take the first right, and that's where we'll meet. So it's miles down the road. So we all take off. And everybody's at different speeds. So after a while, everybody's spread out. I can't see the person ahead of me. I can't see the person behind me. You're just jogging along. Beautiful Vermont countryside. You're going up and down hills, and I go along, and there's this church and a wedding, and everybody's pouring out of the church, and the bride and the groom, and they're out on the road. So you have to like sort of slow down and go through the crowd, and I keep going. I keep going. There's no right turn. There's no right, so I'm exhausted, when it's starting to get dark. I have no idea how far I went, right? So then I said, all right, I'll start walking for a while. I walk for a while and I go, forget it. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going on. So then I turn around and I figure, all right, I'll walk back to where the beginning was, because now I'm exhausted and it's getting very dark. So I'm walking along, and a police car comes, and they go, "Are you Ken Brandt?" I'm like, wow, how did they know who I was, So I said, yes. And the guy takes me back to where the team was. Well, it turns out that behind that giant crowd getting out of the church, that was where the right turn was. Only I just kept going. I didn't notice it, right? I didn't see it. So my team had called like the police, the morgues, the hospital. They had no idea where I was, right? They'd looked around. So it turns out there was, maybe another little advantage to being nearsighted. I got to see more stuff. I did a little extra training. The whole thing was good.
Yeah. So now, you ended up in internet technology and internet security. So I know you're retired, man, but we really need you. Why, I'm sure. I don't know if you've seen the story about the big pipeline from Houston to New Jersey. That's
major news.
Yeah, currently offline. Well, you never can tell if news here is news other places. But what I'd like to ask you about, this was a recent topic at a vocational training I was part of here in Houston for other visually impaired people. What are some of the simple things that you would advise people as far as their internet security, and are there different considerations for somebody who has poor eyesight?
First, I don't think there are different considerations. The same things pretty much apply to everybody. Don't share your passwords. You change your passwords fairly regularly. Back up your PC. Have your PC backup either be in the cloud or somewhere off-site. Don't back it up and put it in a drawer right next to your PC. Have an email system that checks for spam and tries to check for viruses as it comes in. Have antivirus software on your PC, and all these apply to Macs as well, and or any other operating system. So it's a bunch of just common sense mistakes. Don't, if your browser warns you that a site is potentially dangerous, do not go there. If your email says, this email is dangerous, do not open it. Even aside from that, be careful about emails. Don't open stuff if you're not confident that it's going to be okay. Keep in mind that your friends get hacked every once in a while, so you'll get an email from a friend, and it won't be a real email; it'll be somebody else. So look and think before you open stuff and as you read stuff, especially before you click on any links whatsoever. So just those basic steps are pretty much the same for everybody. You cannot perfectly protect yourself no matter what you do, but you can do a lot of things that will help the vast majority of times.
I think it's interesting that you also mentioned Mac, because for a long time it was kind of assumed. I think there's still a lot of people who still believe that the Mac OS, or especially the iPhones, that they don't have to worry about those things. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, well, part of that is just because, like on the PC world, that's the logical target for hackers, because there's so many more Windows-based systems than there are Mac-based systems. So, that was a big part of it. And in the past, Windows has had a lot more problems. They've really done a ton of work to make their systems better. The phones are a different thing. They're all, it's all newer technology. They're not carrying some of the older technology. So phones are generally safer, but you still want to be just as careful, especially if you have your phone connected to a whole bunch of other things, like your PC, like a bunch of apps.
Yeah. So with your low vision, do you find it as an advantage or disadvantage when it comes to managing social media, or do you do social media considering you're retired?
No, I like social media. So I've been trying to publicize my book. I'm spending much more time since writing the book on social media than I ever did before, just because I do posts about the book, about interviews. Like when this is released, when the video that we're doing now is released, I'll put that on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and hopefully even more people will watch it than your usual group.
That's always the hope. That is always the hope. And but you do have a good following. I try to tell people that, at least for me, and of course, I've got a whole lot less vision than you. I depend more on screen reader than you do. But I try to tell my friends that if they really want me to see their stuff, just to be sure and tag me. That
It's 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that thing where you put in the description of any photo is important too. I forget what you call it, but I try to do that every time.
Yeah, the alternative text description, or
Yes.
text. Yeah, that's very important. Thanks for.
And some systems let you like almost as many words as you need, and others, they're a little harder to write because they don't give you as many characters.
Yeah, I think it's funny that on Twitter you get more characters for your picture description than you get to talk about your picture.
Yeah. But that's a nice thing.
Yeah. So, if you know that you have a fair number of blind people in your audience, or low vision people, really use those alternative tags, because they can be your friends. They can drive people to your website the way the rest of your social media post doesn't.
It also, those alt text things also help search engines understand everything. So yeah, it's good for search visibility.
Right. I loved when that finally started to become public knowledge, because for years I would tell people that they needed to add those alternative text tags for people like me, because it was the right thing to do, and without them I would miss their content, and nobody ever listened. But once they found out that they were missing out on search traffic, then a lot more people wanted to do them without me having to nag them.
Well, until I wrote my book and started meeting a lot of people that are in the low vision field, people who, they work for eyeglass companies or contact lens companies, or they're opticians or optometrists or ophthalmologists or vision scientists or something, or organizations for the nearsighted and blind. And, there's this whole giant community of people I hadn't met. And I just hadn't paid any attention or somehow had not known about alt text. I just didn't know what it was until after talking to other people.
All right. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with you, Ken. I'm glad we finally got to sit down and talk. Would you like to make some final comments to the listeners? And then, while I usually do an outro today, I think we'll pass on on what did we learn from Ken. If you would like to play a few more bars or something else on our way out.
No, I'll leave it. Leave that to you. I guess in terms of final words, first, thank you very much for having me on. Second, thank you to the audience for watching and listening. Third, at the beginning, Max, gave a whole litany of sites and things he wants people to look at. So that's great. And I'll just add, please look at kenbrandt.com, KENBRANDT.com, or, directly check out my book on almost every online bookstore and some other actual bookstores. Any bookstore can order it. So Positive Vision, Enjoying the Adventures and Advantages of Poor Eyesight. And, I just say to anybody who's, got any kind of vision or other issues, just be grateful for whatever abilities you have. Enjoy the challenge, decide what you want to do, give it a red hot go, just go for it. You're going to have some mishaps and fun along the way. Make sure you're able to laugh at yourself and just go for it. Have a fun time. So those are my, I guess, final thoughts for you.
All right. Well, Ken, I appreciate them. I've really enjoyed getting to spend some time with you. I'm sure the people watching and listening have too. And look forward to seeing what you're going to do next, or what we're going to hear from you as far as your retirement, and continue to enjoy life, my friend.
Thank you very much. And I hope in a couple of months, so that should be nice too.
Yeah. People don't realize that it's a difficult, sometimes time consuming and sometimes expensive process to go from ebook to audiobook. So we'll be looking forward to the audio. Be sure and let me know, because one of the great things about these is we can always add a mention of the audiobook later, even after this, the post about this episode is going out on my website. So we'll look forward to that.
Cool.
Resume recording.
Okay, well, this is a great interview. I enjoyed spending time with Ken, and I hope that y'all do check out his book, Positive Vision. Positive Vision, Enjoying the Adventures and Advantages of Having Poor Vision. And like you said, you can find that all on all the book sites and his website, kenbrandt.com. That's BRANDT. So great story about skydiving. I'm still not convinced. I still ain't going to do it. Great points there at the end about how we have to be willing to laugh at ourselves and try things. And what was that phrase he used? Red hot moment or something like that. So I hope he's encouraged you to go out and try things, and not to worry how good you are at them or how good you look trying to do them or how bad you look. I've often said that life ain't the Olympics, and we would accomplish more if we stopped trying to win style points. I especially love the message behind him playing on the beginning of this. Now, y'all should know again, he is living in Melbourne, and it's tomorrow morning there. So I was really impressed with how well he played, especially now that I know that he doesn't read music, and there's only so much you can rehearse and practice and memorize. I know that better than anybody. One of the reasons why I don't post more music more often is because I have to memorize. So I love the fact that he was willing to do that, but also the most important thing, he asked. He listened to some episodes of my show. He noticed that I like to sing on my intro. And he said, "Hey, Max, why don't you let me play some music?" So I said, "Sure, what the heck?" Because as I mentioned to him during the interview, I would be a very poor host and a very poor teacher if I didn't respond favorably to somebody who said, "Hey, this is what I'm asking for, and it's a reasonable request." So, and someday soon, me and him are going to record me and him playing and singing together. I'm really looking forward to that. Don't know if it'll happen in person in Melbourne or virtually through Zoom, but we will see. Um, I loved his thing about the skydiving, how he didn't want to go to the place where you jump tethered. He wanted to actually do it, which is cool. And how his vision kind of resulted in him ending up pretty close to the target by using what vision he did have. So I enjoyed his story. And for y'all parents out there, don't forget the words you use with your children are very important. If they feel like you don't trust them to try new things, they will never trust themselves. If you put limits on them, then they won't want to break through the limits that other people will place on them later in life, or other people will try to place on them. So I encourage those children, whether it's a learning disability, a physical disability, vision loss, or perhaps maybe they're just awkward. Perhaps compared to the other kids, they are just different and don't look the same, or don't sound the same, or just don't appear to fit in. When we put limits on children, we're putting limits on their entire lives in some cases. Not every person will break out of those limits that we establish when they're children. So I hope you take that message. This is a very important message from Ken and from his mom. And it's pretty cool that he also wanted to mention her again, as it is still close to Mother's Day. All right. I appreciate y'all's time. I know you have lots of other things you could be doing besides watching and listening to me and my guests. I do hope you'll visit theblindblogger.net/store and pick up a shirt or a book. I hope you'll check out Chip Edwards at createmyvoice.com, because without him, I wouldn't get to do a lot of the cool things I get to do. He's not only financial sponsor, but it encourages me all the darn time. And I hope that you will visit my new friends over at blueberry.com, as their hosting service is one I use for this podcast. And they are graciously going to help me make the podcast network, the What's Your Excuse Network, a reality. So check out blueberry.com. No matter what, always go back to theblindblogger.net. And until next time, I hope you take care of yourself, stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, stay distant. And really, we want everybody to make it through to the end of this mess. All right. So until next time, take care now. Too many times we stand aside and let the water slip away, till what we put off to tomorrow has finally come today. So don't stand upon the shoreline and say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids and dare to dance the tide.